Welcome everyone to this episode of Discourse, where today we're going to be reviewing Could It Be? Biblical Gems from the Garbage Dump by Joseph C. Way. This book is designed to stir the status quo and begins the stirring process by re-examining old passages from a new approach. Its author believes the only road leading to intellectual and spiritual growth runs through the crowded and musty city of old ideas and winds through the treacherous valley of new possibilities.
Could it be? That's the question that's asked throughout the book. The author gives us his interpretation, what people pretty much have accepted, right? The interpretation through the ages.
Right.
But he questions it and he gives us his perspective, aside from the historical and what has been, for ages. And an example can be found literally throughout the whole book, but some that stuck out to us were such as chapter 1, right? The blazing bush, which is a passage from the book of Exodus, which is chapter 3, starting on verse 1. The opening verses of the 3rd chapter of Exodus present the familiar story of Moses and a blazing bush that was not consumed. He was working as a common shepherd, tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro. As was customary for shepherds, Moses daily traveled a great distance to find adequate grazing for the flock under his care. And then it goes on to say, few, if any of us, have ever actually heard the voice of God calling from a blazing bush that was or was not consumed. Few people ever make that claim. Those who do are usually labeled schizophrenic and are frequently found in a mental hospital. Therefore, we tend to write off this story as ancient, unrealistic, and basically irrelevant to any of us because it happened to a special person for a special purpose in a special way, none of which we understand.
Yeah, I feel like this passage especially, but throughout all the chapters, there is this amount of questionable scenarios where us, especially today, like now, it's hard to believe these things either happened or may have happened. So I feel like this book is definitely dedicated to like religious type people, but I also feel like it can be for unreligious people in the way that like they question so much, right? About faith. Like how can you have such blind faith and things like that? I feel like the author brings up a lot of good questions that non-believers would think to ask. And I feel like the author does an amazing job with giving plenty of examples with each chapter covering a different passage or a different verse and different books throughout the Bible, giving us the interpretation. But not only that, also kind of flipping it and questioning it and seeing it from a different perspective and sort of reconciling that doubt that people would have.
And he doesn't say throughout the book, but we also get the what if.
Right.
Like, what if this was in a blazing or a burning bush, but a poinsettia tree?
Right.
Or there's other trees that the color of the leaves and the moving of the wind, makes it look like it's burning.
Yeah.
But when you get close to it, like there's no smoke, there's no actual burning.
Fire.
Even back then, if Moses came up to him and was like, dude, I heard the word of God, through this burning bush, but it wasn't burning. It was just a blaze. And he told me this, and that. And I would be like, don't you walk that all the time with your sheep? Like, are you sure it wasn't just something you saw? Like I doubt you experienced that.
Yeah, like you were just tired walking around or something.
Yeah.
And it was late at night.
And the author also tells us that that kind of became like a holy ground for Moses because that's where that experience happened. But just because that happened to him doesn't necessarily make it a holy grounds for everyone else. It's based on, personal experiences and, what happens to you personally. Like I could have had an experience, like, I don't know, in the backyard of my home, and that'll be like a holy ground for me. But to like Rita over here, it's just a place where the kids play. It's nothing special. So it gives us a lot of those, what ifs, or could it be that this actually happened instead of that, or could it be that he misinterpreted what he heard, or it was just the ruffling of the wind, and the sounds made on the leaves. He heard something.
I like that the author also brings up like different foliage at that time, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize poinsettias are like trees. I thought they were just like those tiny, cute little planted flowers that you
around
buy
during Christmas.
yeah, that you buy around Christmas time.
Yeah.
But apparently they're like trees and stuff, and I feel like that makes so much sense. If I had seen that and it was a long time ago and like
you're dehydrated,
didn't
you're
have
like
that
tired.
knowledge of what they were, I feel like I would have thought the same thing, honestly.
So he doesn't discredit, what was written, but he does say, could it have been something else?
Yeah.
Or this could have also been true if it was told. So it just brings up these questions, make us think. And, another chapter in his book, chapter 4, titled Muddy Waters, he takes it from the book of Exodus also, chapter 14, starting on verse 5. And on that one is where the Israelites escaped the rule of the Egyptians. They were slaves and they run away. And Moses kind of leads them away, and he makes the waters part, and they escape the Egyptian army. So, and I thought this was very interesting. When it became apparent that each Israelite might have to fend for himself or herself, they thought slavery was better than death in the wilderness. During various periods and events in human history, others were of the same opinion, expressed either in word or actions. Such as how many in America thought it was better to be a slave to existing social conditions than to hear the necessary pain in the fight for freedom, desegregation, etc.
Yeah, when I initially read that, I thought, like, wait, what? Like, I think I just read that totally wrong.
Yeah, it's like,
but
you're free. What are you doing? Why are you trying to go back?
Yeah, but then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, I understand what he's saying. He's saying that they found that it would be just easier to go with the flow of slavery rather than work up the courage and all that fight that they have to do in order to gain their freedom. And also, I feel like maybe it was like a sense of comfort, right? Like they already knew what to expect with slavery and their position in life. So that they're just kind of like, well, that is like way too much work that I'm not willing to put in because I could possibly die from that. Yeah. So I got what he was saying in that moment. It made sense.
And it's just crazy because it's pretty true. And how the author brought it forth into like American history, like slavery. A lot of people didn't want it, didn't like it, but they just accepted it because raising their voice or bringing anything would just bring them trouble. I don't know, I just thought it was interesting because when I heard of this story about the Israelites, I thought they're free. Now they could keep going, don't look back, and be excited about, the next opportunity in life. But a lot of them, when Moses said, all right, now it's your turn. I led you out here. Now carry on and start your lives. They were like, wait, how do I do that?
They're kind of starting from scratch, right? Like they have to find a place where they're accepted. They need to find work. They need to take care of their families. There's so much pressure very quickly in order to get like their life straight, which is, a great thing because they're not slaves anymore, but it's also extremely difficult starting from zero.
Could this story be a vivid reminder that humanity's power and mental capacity are, never have been, and never will be superior to God's? God has blessed us with an abundance of both. When we depend only on them, we inevitably find ourselves in a box canyon with no human means of escape. It is only God's gracious acts that can set us free. We may or may not be aware of divine deliverance. We sometimes call it a natural phenomenon.
Yeah, so when he says, God kind of works in mysterious ways, right? Divine intervention and things like this. I feel like that's true in a lot of senses, and miracles that happen. And he's constantly saying like these are things that happen to special people, special moments of time or whatever. But I think he's also right in saying that though these things happen every day, all the time to people, we just don't recognize it as such.
Yeah, and he even gives a personal example when he was like, I think an Air Force chaplain, where he was at, the waters actually parted back so much that he could actually drive he called it a mechanical chariot, his car through it, through this muddy river that once had a flowing, water. And that's a natural phenomenon.
Right.
But someone could interpret it as,
God.
something that God created. And he kind of says that either way, it's nature, and God created this world of nature. So it's kind of God made either way. Things like that happen all the time. We just, I don't know, overlook it.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys, and be sure to check out Could It Be? Biblical Gems from the Garbage Dump by Joseph Seaway.